welcome to Pubcast. Thanks for joining us again. We're back at the Redwood at London Bridge, the home of sport. Come down, enjoy a few beers and watch everything from NFL to the Ryder Cup and the Premier League, of course. And our friends have joined us again. There's Nadia, there's Lee, there's Ronnie Brand. All our mates are back here. We're back in the pub talking everything football. And of course, what this is all about is getting some absolute legends to join us and come and tell us about their careers and what's happening in football right now. Tony Cascarino, absolute legend, joins us again, but we've got a very special treat for you. Paul Miller has joined us, a complete Spurs legend. I nearly called you Graham Roberts then because I've got Graham Roberts in my head. Another great centre-half, but they played when football was tough. It moved, you kick it. Man and ball doesn't pass. We'll get deep down under the skin of Paul Miller's career. What a fabulous career, and obviously we'll get into the Premier League and everything football as well. But to start off, Kaz, let's get straight into Paul. Paul, you were nearly a one-club man. So you started as a 14-year-old at Spurs?
A bit like younger, actually, 13. I played, I'm a very proud East Ender. Played for a very famous boys team called Senreb, which was affiliated to Chelsea in those days.
Good
Senreb produced a lot of players. So I went to Chelsea as a 10-year-old, their academy, which was fantastic. Bit difficult for a young 10, 11-year-old travelling from Stepney Green Station to Malden in Mitcham in Surrey on the trains. I think I let my son do that now. Yeah, it was good, and Dave Sexton was there and all the Chelsea boys. But eventually they built a really stand that made them go skint, and I looked around and thought I want to go somewhere else. And the great Bobby Moore, who's a family friend, advised me and said, look, I think Spurs is your best pick out of Spurs and Arsenal, which I had a choice in the end. And I never regretted it. It was the right thing to do.
Controversial for some people. Obviously that rival, and it's the London derby this weekend, but next weekend. We're getting into that. So when did you sign pro?
So I left school probably a year earlier than I should have done, but my school wasn't too bad. My school was football and fighting, which I quite liked actually. Okay. I left school at 15 in 75, and I apprenticed then, doing all jobs that they don't do now, cleaning boots, sweeping up, whatever. And at 17 I signed pro, and then at 18 I went on loan to a Norwegian club in Oslo, Skeid, and we finished third in the league, qualified for UEFA Cup, and I was player of the year. While I was away, we signed little signings of Argentinians, so I came back to a different club. We used to have half a dozen pressmen on a Friday then, all of a sudden we had 60 from around the world. And I played shortly after in the first team and never looked back. But the great thing was in those days, where I was lucky and fortunate, is that 2/3 of the squad were homegrowns. And it had never happened before and it's never happened since. So I actually ended up playing with all my mates. And going around the world with them, and having great fun. So it was a bit different then, and it'll never probably happen again. And today we still are mates. There's still 12, 15 of us gather together often for lunches, golf, and at the ground. So we're quite unique in that respect.
So Paul, I was going to ask you, because when you were a kid and you're coming through the system, a lot of people will get obsessed with finance. Tell us your first deal, your first contract at Tottenham, of some ballpark of figure of what they were earning. What year it is? 78, 77?
So 77, so we're going to sign a pro. And in those days, we had, by the way, so I joined Spurs under Bill Nicholson, signed early on. Then I signed an apprentice for Terry Neal, and he gets sacked, and we have Keith Birkinshaw. So Spurs have one manager 16 years, and they have 3 in 2 years. I thought it was me, I thought it was a bad omen. Berkey being a Yorkshireman as well, so the first year's salary for pros was 80 quid. But because I different. But Mum got £100 a month to look after me, feed and look after me. I was getting 20 quid as an apprentice and getting like another 30 quid expenses, even though I lived down the road, because I was clever that way. I used to go the long way. So I'm getting about 50 quid. So it worked out. Signing pro, I was going to be a fiver better off. So I said to Birkinshaw, I'm sorry, I'm not having this. He said, what do you mean? Normally people couldn't wait to sign pro to get you out doing the jobs. I said, well, I'm not having it. For 5 or more. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I'll go somewhere else. He said, we can hold your contract. I said, no, you can't. I said, you gave me a backhander when I was younger, was probably illegal. So I said, I'll just tell people that. I told the Daily Mirror and we'll see where we go. So Birkinshaw said, this could ruin your career. I said, I don't care. Anyway, I got another 20 quid. So all the other boys were delighted because they weren't 80 quid anymore, it was now 100 quid. It wasn't a fortune but it made a big difference, yeah. And everything else. So that's my first wage was £100 a week.
So it was literally, I mean, we talk about the old school of your mum gets a bit of money, you get some so that you're paying your bills. We talked about this last time. But the other things you said about you were cleaning boots, you still had jobs. And how important do you think that is to development, and do you think they should be doing that now?
Yeah, I think they should be doing something. I mean, today, of course, with coronavirus, they don't want to touch other people's boots anymore. But I think it gave us a good background and hunger. And the hunger as well to become a pro and go into another dressing room. We had 3 dressing rooms. Right. Then so youth players get changed in one, the young pros another, and the first team another. So your big aim was to get to the next dressing room. Right. But it gave you good growing up habits and things. And I mean, actually for me, cleaning my boots was new because my mum had cleaned my boots from the age of 8. She'd always cleaned my boots. So when I started cleaning my own boots and 2 other young pros' boots, that was all new to me. I knew how to do it, obviously, but I mean, I tried not to do it. But it was a good habit. I mean, it's good to do, I think, in those days.
Talk about, because you mentioned Ardiles, and Villa coming to the club. I was at their very first game. I think it's Nottingham Forest away, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And I was there. I remember that experience of Tottenham having 2 World Cup winners in the squad. That must have been extraordinary because you had big name players at Spurs at that time.
No, not well. We'd gone down and we came back up. We'd gone down 2 seasons before, then came back up and finished 3rd. So we bounced straight back. We were all right, but we weren't that good, to be fair, yeah? They obviously came in and made a hell of a difference. I was still in Norway when they came, by the way. I didn't come back till the end of September. But, I mean, they did, the ticker tape and all the rest of it, they made such a difference. But in saying that, the first home game, we got beat 4-1 by Villa. Drew at Forest, the first away game, and got beat by Villa. So it wasn't, and then 3 weeks later, got smashed 7-0 at Anfield.
Yeah, remember that game.
And then at Christmas, Boxing Day, we got beat 5-0 at home to Arsenal. Those 2 results, Liverpool and Arsenal, for me, changed my life because then Berkey, who had no money to spend because the Argentinians had taken it all, and Glenn was sort of coming through then as well, earning some money, he had to go with youth. And during the next 2 or 3 months, 3 or 4 of us got in the team. I think because of those 2 big results, Liverpool and Arsenal. And so I was quite thankful for them in those days, yeah. And then I started playing, and the rest is history, yeah.
Well, those were the days, and we'll get more onto that in a little bit. English clubs were massive in Europe. Talking about Villa, Liverpool, and obviously Spurs. So you go in very quickly into a very purple patch of the 81 Cup final, 82 Cup final. You go into 2 wins that really still define Spurs. I mean, I know everyone sort of has a little dig at Spurs. Haven't really won much since, but this was a very special period that's very important in the club. So as a youngster in that, what was it like coming through?
As we would know, the 3 of us, you want to be a footballer because of cup finals. On cup final day, it started at 8 o'clock, it finished at 7 o'clock at night. You were in all day and you went out after the cup final, went out trying to emulate the people you'd just seen on the telly. The reason we become footballers is to play in a cup final. I was 21 and we have one. I'm sharing a room with Glenn Hoddle and we're both laughing and joking about what we're watching on the telly. We're like 2 little kids. And we've had Top of the Pops before that, and Blue Peter, and all the other stuff that goes with the build-up to the cup final. And we're just, saying how we were as little kids watching all this. So, when you fulfil that and you go out, you get a bit carried away with it actually, because it's the 100th cup final. You're going to meet the Queen Mum, and the football starts taking second thoughts to you, because you're thinking about everything else and your family, the tickets. It's all a bit rushed, And the FA Cup was the biggest game in the world then. Yeah. Everybody in the world watched it, and certainly on that one. South America, the first time ever took it, so it had another 300 or 400 million people because of the Argentinians. They're going to watch it. And Aussie's Dream, the record with Chaz and Dave, it's all down in folklore, yeah. The great thing for me, after about a minute, the ball gets played down line, and Kevin Reeves, the centre forward of Man City, who wasn't the bravest to be fair, comes across and smashes me with his elbow in the chops. No. And down I go, and I get up and I said, "Oh, you found some bravery." And all of a sudden, I forgot the 100,000 and the 600-700 people around the world watching the game. It done me a world of good. And
what did you want to do to him at that stage?
I think 5 minutes later, I did what I wanted to do, and probably a lot more after that. Yeah.
See, I played against Paul, and I think Graham as well at the time, where Gillingham had played Spurs in the cup game at Priestfield, which is Gillingham Stadium, and you had a great Spurs team around them early 80s, and I got first experience. When you come up against the savvy guys in the game, been around the block, know all the tricks, know what to do, and they were everywhere in the Premier League of some level, you'd always find a club with a couple of hard centre halves in the game.
Because you were quite happy to mix it up, weren't you?
Yeah, he loved it.
Is that something you thought about, or is it just natural in your game? Because you, Graham, you were tough. You were uncompromising centre halves. You head it, you kick it. You know, you didn't let.
I think, you know. Also, I mean, background. I mean, my background was East End. I never had a bath till I was 10. You know, we lived upstairs. People lived downstairs. It was a tough era. I think, as we spoke earlier, you know, your mum and dad don't earn money. You don't eat. You know, there's no benefits in those days. So, the East End was a proper tough, poor place to grow up in. Yeah, was never allowed over this water. South London, don't go over there. You won't come back. So yeah, I mean, I did do, and I think for the team that we had at the time, it needed that, right. And I was a bit more savvy maybe than Robbo. Robbo was a bit more blatant than me, yeah. But as a pair, I think not many people like playing against us. But there were some great pairs out there who also game as well, you know, that era, that period, because it was part of the game. It was part of what it was, and you know, crap pitches and physical and heavy balls and whatever, yeah.
Well, do you know what I find really funny? Because you know, they always talk about the Chelsea Leeds game of if they replayed it today, there'd be like 8 red cards. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now you had played in a number of games during the 80s where you would say yellows and reds there regular.
I speak to Souness often, who's my friend, and we're both like angry old men, you know, on the phone, and without a doubt, both of us, our first tackles would be a red card. I think today, if you look at a lot of players in the era, then every team had to have it. The first couple of tackles, you know, studs up, whatever, over the top, red cards.
Genuinely, because it was funny, as a forward player, Tony, as a wide player, you're always thinking about doing skills, you're always thinking about beating your man. And it used to be funny, because I used to be in the dressing room, before we went out, we'd have the coaches and the manager saying to the defenders, the first chance you get, you smash that and let him know you're there and leave a little something on him. And I used to sit there and think, they must be saying that. Because if you've got like a jinky winger or a fast forward.
Especially something like that game as well, you know.
And that's what it was about. Your first tackle was actually setting a stall out for the rest of the game.
So that was why you was quiet in the first 15 minutes.
and then you had the other way, of course, when, you know, great Ray Clements, one of my great friends who we lost last November, he'd say to me we're playing against Cyril Regis and Gary Thompson at West Brom, who were going a couple of boys, and he said, don't upset them early, don't say anything, don't upset them early, just be nice, yeah? And of course we'd whack them early on and have a bit of verbal, and all of a sudden then it'd be World War III, yeah? And Cyril one game broke Clem's nose and he blamed me after. He said it was my fault because I'd wound Cyril up. God bless him, another one we lost. But so that was how it is. Listen, end of the game we shook hands, and whenever we see each other today, we're great friends and it's great camaraderie.
Here's a question for them, Paul. What would you make of social media if it was available then? What it'd have been like regards to the game?
I think it would have changed our life, and certainly couldn't do a lot of things we did. I mean, it was a big drinking culture. I mean, the best teams were the best drinkers. Liverpool, Everton, Villa, ourselves, Forest, those days. Big drinkers. And it's sad about fitness. You know, we're all playing 60, 70 games a year with 15-man squads. Having injections, which is why after players of my age today are all walking around like cripples, yeah? Which is not clever. This other thing with dementia now, you know, heading the balls, I'm not sure, because, you know, people like Terry Venables have got dementia and he never headed the ball in his life. So I'm not sure how we go through that one, but certainly it was tough days, and that's how it was. And it was what you remember as a kid, you brought up in the same way. So it wasn't like it was all new. You know, it was what you'd had as a 9-year-old. I had people trying to bully me when I first started playing, 9 and 10 years old. Especially I'm not a shy cockney, yeah. And it was like, oh, we're going to smash you, yeah. I said, okay, if you want. But I always played a year older anyway. Most of my school football, so I quite enjoyed it really.
Different times. I mean, Paul went on to play 300 games for Spurs and another 100 games for Charlton, Watford, Bournemouth and Swansea. But you had to retire quite early, knee injuries.
Yeah, I had a knee injury, and I think I was ready to come out. Football had become a little bit of a bad taste for me. And because I had lots of friends who worked in the city just down the road, I thought I had a bit more in me. I thought I had a bit more education in me to do. And I went into the insurance industry first and then went into banking after. And I left school at 14, we're 15 really, but I re-educated and took exams and things and business courses, and so I've become a city person, and I quite enjoyed that, and I've always enjoyed it since.
Was you a player that were glad you retired? Because I said this, when I retired, I was happy to hang up my boots. I don't know how you were, John, but that was a big part of me. I was remember thinking, I don't have to do it anymore. I loved it while I'd done it, but it was a part of me was a relief that I'd finished my football career.
For me, I had a bad knee. I'd had a knee operation very early on, and it hadn't been done properly. And in the end, I'm getting caught by young players and getting, and get embarrassed by them at times, and thinking like, this wouldn't happen 2-3 years ago, yeah. So I think my body was telling me I wasn't right. And also I went to see a specialist in Harley Street because I was insured and everything else. And I said to him, "What do you think?" He said, "I think you can get away with 2 games a month, but you got to rest like a week after." So I said, "I don't think clubs do that, yeah." Probably get away with it now, actually. But so it was time to retire, and I did, and I was pleased, and I thought I got out at the right time, really, yeah. Just prior to the Premier League coming along, so good timing, really.
Yeah, that wasn't great timing, but it's one of those things that we should explore more, is about sometimes guys coming out of football and going into the city and doing different professions, because everyone always asks me, what do footballers go on to do? Where are they now? What are they doing? And there is so much world and life out there, but it's actually doing football and being a footballer as a profession is the best thing ever.
Yeah, well, you don't know any difference. So people say, well, you become a footballer. Well, I said, I don't know. I didn't have anything else. I never had any other ambitions to be anything else. I think because where I lived and the environment I lived in, if I hadn't been a footballer, I'd have joined the RAF to travel, or the Navy. I would have gone into the services. Because I've got a lot of friends in the military. I love the military. I'm a big patriot, but I would have done that because I felt I had a bit more just being an East Ender. I wanted to get out of that. Yeah, actually, I should have kept some property there now, because nowadays it's one of the trendiest places in England where I used to live.
You are actually a fantastic advert for kids, knowing that there's more to life than football, and if it doesn't work out for injuries or whatever happens, there's plenty of life out there, and you've done that so successfully. We're here on Pubcast, where we're talking all the big topics in football. And sadly this week we saw one of our greatest players, Jimmy Greaves, pass away at the not even an old age of 81. It's so tragic, and incredibly, we've paid homage to him, and all the love's gone out to him, but he was truly one of the all-time greats, wasn't he? And obviously, you being at Spurs, you've got plenty of stories, but Kaz, what's your memories of Jimmy?
Mainly by just watching videos and watching, you look back at time, and when I was a kid, Jimmy was I've got lots of friends who are of an age where they talk about the greatest striker they ever saw, the greatest predator they ever see, his quick feet, his ability to get goals, and the simplicity of the type of goals he got. You do wonder about what sort of player Jimmy would be in the modern game, and I think it's quite clear he'd be one hell of a striker, because all the attributes you need, he would have benefited from.
Incredible strike. I mean, I remember Jimmy Hill and Saint and Greavesy, when I was growing up. It was, and he was a cheeky chappy about town. I didn't really know too much, but I've seen, a bit like George Best, you see the footage, and you just know you're watching someone who was so special and was a true great. But you've got a few more stories on Jimmy. You actually...
Well, I think Jimmy Greaves, Chelsea as well. A lot of Chelsea people remember him in the early days.
Did he have 1 year at Chelsea?
No, he signed. He's a 15-year-old.
West Ham
at the end of his career. But
he signed as a schoolboy. Jim was a very sought-after schoolboy, by the way. I think Chelsea paid quite a lot of money for him as a young man. Yeah, because again, he'd been 10 or 12 clubs wanted Jim, and he was, he was a young star. I mean, he broke all the records in youth football. I mean, I think he scored a hat-trick on every debut he ever made, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, which ain't a bad thing.
That's ridiculous.
But Jim's stats at Chelsea are frightening.
Yeah.
So many 120 goals, 170 games.
So he actually sits only behind Ronaldo and Messi in the scoring charts in Europe.
And if you think about, when Jim played with crap pitches, heavy balls, and people try to kill him every week, it's a miracle, yeah? What I would say with Jim, whose best friend was Bobby Moore, whoever met Jimmy Greaves loved Jimmy Greaves. Jimmy Greaves, one of the most likeable men in the world, good sense of humour, quite sharp-witted, clever, Dagenham boy, fantastic physique. Had his troubles later on, with alcohol, which was well documented, but got over that, and then produced, was a part of a double act on television, which for me was one of the best football TV shows ever. It's Saint and Greavesy.
I was going to say to you, Paul, because one of the things that stood out with, and I obviously growing up and watching Saints and Greavesy, was that he was an incredible humble man for what he achieved in the game.
Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, I played with three, Clements, Hoddle and Ardiles, three of the great players. Every great player I've ever met is humble. I've never seen any great player be big-headed. And big-time Charlie, yeah? They're all humble. And Jimmy Greaves, I mean, just going back to the World Cup, to think Jimmy Greaves didn't play, if you just said to people before the game, before the tournament started, you're going to win the World Cup without Jimmy Greaves, they'd laughed at you. Jimmy Greaves at the time, along with Pele and Eusebio, was the best three players in the world. And we won it with, he only played 2 games.
In that echelon, wasn't he? He was right at the top of the tree.
I mean, unbelievable. You look at his goals and stats, it's surreal. And his pace, that's the big thing about, say, well, would he play today? Hold on, look at his pace he had. I know it's a bit sluggish, but if you're running around playing 60 games in the conditions we play, you had to train and play, and you'll be a bit slower anyway, yeah?
But you actually told me a little story, and you were starting to tell that about the sports science and the discipline and the
dedication that players had back then, and could he play now? Surely, you were saying he was playing under Terry Venables, or with Terry Venables, and they went. What was their pre-match routine?
So Terry Venables told me a great story about Jim once, and Terry's about to make his debut as a young 17-year-old for Chelsea, and of course Jim and Terry both Dagenham boys, and Jim lived down the road. Jim was 19 but had a car, and in 1959 a car was like wow. No players had cars. And obviously on the Saturday, from going from Dagenham to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge wouldn't have been a difficult journey. It'd been half hour, yeah, because there's only a couple of buses on the road if you're lucky. So anyway, he said, all right, so I'll pick you up. He said, we go to a little cafe, have a pre-match meal. So Terry said, okay. So Terry said, we get to the cafe. He said, I've been sick all night, worried, nervous about my debut. All of a sudden, Jim goes in this cafe. Hello, Jim, you all right? Yeah, fine. He said, got a nice roast beef and 3 veg today, Jim. Fancy it? He went, go on then. It's about you. So I was like, I'll have a little bit of chicken. Terry said, I'm picking the chicken. I don't even want it, yeah? He said, Jim demolishes the lot, smashes it down. All of a sudden, the owner comes over again, says, Jim, bit of afters. He said, what you got? He said, apple pie and custard. He said, go on, wonderful, I'll have it. How about you, Tom? He said, I can't even look at it, let alone eat it. He said, Jim demolishes it down. Anyway, he said, we get in the car, we get to Stamford Bridge about 1 o'clock. He said, 1:15. Jim's in sorting out some tickets, and he said, I'm looking across at him, he said, about 2:30, because Jimmy Greaves always got changed late. I don't know if you know that. A very late changer, and there's no warm-ups.
3 o'clock kickoffs,
yeah, 3 o'clock kickoffs, and there's no warm-up in those days. He said, I'm looking at him at 2:30. He's sitting there with his club suit on, he said, smoking a fag, reading the programme. And I'm looking at him, I know what he's eating. I'm saying, he's our star. We're going to rely on him today. He said, he won't be able to run. He said, what happened? We won 5-2, he got hat-trick. He said, don't ever talk to me about diets and things again.
Oh, bless him. Jimmy was a true great.
And, going back from the 80s and before, many of these players, the pitches he played on, I remember my early days, and Paul would, similar time, early 80s as well, where you're thinking, a little bobble here, a little bobble, you can easily miss a chance. These were times of...
brown diamonds on the pitch, it's a brown diamond. And November onwards, that was all the pitches.
You'd have had 2-3 weeks of being snowed in and playing games on ridiculous conditions.
Yeah, and thancfully you had long studs and a washer, yeah?
Yeah.
So you could still...
Mouldeds weren't about.
Moulded? Only were moulded pre-season, you were moulded, didn't you?
I'm just going to quickly ask you, because I think football was so much more... It was close. We were definitely closer to the fans back then. It was more real. It was more. I just think, was football better then? And it.
Well, they keep telling me about we had dietitians, by the way, and everything else. But we play in 60, 70 games with 15-man squads. They keep saying we're a lot fitter than us today. Maybe so, but if we had today's conditions, we would be as fit as them, and we were certainly fit, by the way. I mean, I know we drank a lot more, but that was part of it. Coming down to get back up for the next game, yeah. Whatever the result, win or lose, we were booze, yeah. And that was all the top clubs. That's why the foreigners couldn't work us out. The Germans and the Italians are going into the mountains for 3-4 weeks before the season started and play us in the early rounds of the European Cups, and we're smashing them. They can't work it out. We've been drinking, yeah?
Well, we had an incredible period then where English clubs were absolutely beating up Europe. We were winning Villa, Nottingham Forest, Liverpool.
If you look at mid-70s to the mid-80s, we won so many trophies, European Cup, Winners' Cup, UEFA Cups, all the half dozen clubs we mentioned. I think the reason they threw us out wasn't high as well, because we kept winning the bloody things. My opinion.
Do laugh, because just quickly on this, is that the foreign players always used to laugh and think it was hilarious that British players would have a beer, but they all smoked.
Yes.
Nearly all of them smoked. Maybe they had a bit of a downside to that as well.
I mean, was he coming and started smoking? I thought he's won the World Cup. Maybe I should start smoking, make me a better player, but I didn't never do it.
Here on Pubcast, we get beneath the skin, and we're going to go a little bit modern now, and we're going to go right back up to date. So Your club, Spurs, not having a great time at the moment, especially Nuno's come in. You started well. You had that bit where Spurs were top and Arsenal were bottom for the international break, which must have been fantastic. But so many Spurs fans said to me, it won't last. Don't even go. Don't laugh. And it's turned out that way, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think first 3 games we were a bit fortunate. Man City home we played quite well, but then you want to play Man City opening game of the season because they've always got their players not quite ready yet because they've all been away, internationals, whatever. The Wolves game we were a bit lucky again. What I'm saying, the first 3 games, yeah, great, 3-1 nils, yeah. But Palace away, I just think Nuno got it wrong, both tactically and selection-wise. And he follows it up again against Chelsea. I think against Chelsea, who are arguably the best team in the league at the moment, certainly one of the top 3 and going to win the league.
He seemed to get it right first 20.
First half, yeah.
I think it seemed.
He did. But I mean, it was always they hadn't really started. We didn't have a shot at goal either. It was quite a negative first half, even though we were holding our own. It wasn't really any. We didn't create any chances. We haven't really got a creative midfield player. And then the smallest man on the pitch scores with a head for a corner, which is a disgrace, by the way. And then after that, it's just keep the score down. It's damage limitation, and they're having a go at. I think you asked about Harry and he.
Yes, I was going to. Yeah, I mean it leads on. It's the topic, isn't it? Everyone's talking about Harry. What do you make of that? It was almost seemed like a farce. I thought it was nailed on. He was going to go. He's England captain. He's a nice guy. He's done so well for Spurs. Wants to go to Man City. Let him go. Doesn't go. There's this big hoo-ha now that's gone on, and now he seems like he's sulking.
Well, the club didn't handle the situation very well. They knew where he was, and they then said, "We don't know where he is. He's supposed to have been back." He'd had permission from the chairman to stay away extra long, but the club kept quiet about it and sold him down the river, to be honest. Right. But he came back and made it up and said, "Okay, let's stay again." Obviously, City didn't offer enough. They were the only game in town as well, so they didn't have to offer any more because. But maybe that's been their mistake because they might regret that later. Right. But Harry, okay, I'm still here and I maybe sign a new contract. He hasn't signed one yet, but I know there's talking about it. What I'm saying is that Harry Kane is a fantastic player, and what people having a pop at him on Sunday, some people, but you got Son as well. You mean Son?
No, Jamie O'Hara went head-to-head with Graham Roberts, and they kind of like,
Jamie O'Hara, I don't have an opinion in my opinion, so that doesn't matter.
A Spurs legend.
Jamie's sorry. Anyway, I know I like Jamie as a kid, but he's got.
Let me just ask. We go under the skin.
Well, let's look. Kane didn't play well against Palace, then didn't play well against Rennes and got taken off. And we all know, all of us here know, Harry Kane is a top-class striker. That he's very best. There isn't arguably anybody in the world as a number 9 better than him. But watching him play back-to-back games, I felt it's not. We don't think, this is a player that's lost it, because he's no way as he has. What I would say is that it feels like his head has been scrambled, and rightly so, but all what's gone on has maybe. And do you know what? He might have a very good team around him.
Well, the other thing as well is that, you say about Harry, we've got Sonny as well as another world-class striker. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, how many... I'm a defender, you've got a central midfield player who destroys people, just gives the ball to a white shirt. You need creative players. Forwards, you still would know, need creative players. You need people to make chances for you. You can't make your own chances, right? And Harry Kane and Sonny have not had any chances. Ain't like he's missing chances. He ain't getting the ball. The reason he's coming deep is he wants to play. He wants to get involved. Because at the moment, we ain't even putting anything in there.
Everton signing Jermaine Gray and Townsend, putting balls in and, for Calvert-Lewin and stuff like that. What do you think Spurs can achieve this year? What will be a good result for Spurs?
Well, you've got the top 4, which is the league's done and dusted with those 4. I'm not sure.
Get Champions League.
We got no chance to get Champions League. No? And then after that, you've got ourselves and Everton and Leicester and West Ham and Villa and Arsenal. The next 6 clubs, we're going to finish 5th or 10th. And we got no chance of getting in the top 4.
So 5th is good and 10th is bad, really.
Yeah. I think between 5th and 10th, there will be very little in it. Those clubs I've just mentioned are all much of a muchness. We all need to play our best teams to have a chance of winning any game. And I mean, can't make 2 or 3 changes because we haven't got the benches or players. Chelsea had 6 players on their bench Sunday, could have played in our team. Right? Yeah.
Who's going to win it for you? Who's going to win the Premier League?
Chelsea.
Chelsea, yeah. Are you still...
Well, I said the other week is that if Chelsea don't come first, they'll be second. I just don't... I think they look the most complete. I think the manager looks brilliant tactically. He's made big calls. And like Paul said, if you look at their bench and who they've got behind, wow. N'Golo Kante can come on as a sub.
Would you fancy playing up against Romelu Lukaku?
Yeah, because he used to be physical against him. With
He'll
easy
just
game,
shoot.
actually. It'd be an easy game, actually. It's not difficult. It's the little sharp ones are a little bit more
He
difficult,
wouldn't live
yeah?
with that. And Ronaldo, he wouldn't. Up front, how
Ronaldo,
good is it to see him back in the Prem?
Yeah, it's fantastic to see Ronaldo back. I mean, but again, he's not getting any younger, yeah? So that was all about commercialism for both United and for Ronaldo, trust me. You know, guy gets £1 million a day on his social media. So he needed a big club to go to, and he's got it, and United shares went up. I think it suited everybody, to be fair. Let's see the long term.
It's an incredible move. I mean, it's wonderful to see him back, and he's hit the ground running. I mean, obviously, I don't know where you sit with the Messi and Ronaldo debate, but the way Ronaldo's come here, taking it on, I thought Messi could have done that for me. I think he could come to City and come and own it, and come and show.
John, all due respect, I think anyone was going to give Messi 35 million quid a year.
But did he need? I mean, but the image rights. So the brilliant thing about Ronaldo is come and he's put United back on the map. It's image rights. He is now CR7. He's all over the world. No, let me ask you a quick one. And this is only 1 minute. I've got this little thing where I know that Rio Ferdinand said something about Ronaldo when he was away in Europe and trying to talk to the players. Do you think Ronaldo's coming back to be manager?
No.
United?
Not yet.
No, you don't see it.
Where did that come from?
I'm seeing that. I think Ronaldo's got a plan.
He's
I think
on
he's
the-
going to play a couple of years at United. I think he's going to dominate Solskjaer, and he's going to be manager of Man United.
I think Solskjaer could go.
You heard it here on Pubcast. Exclusive news. They're not having it, but join us again. We get some questions from the audience. This is Pubcast. We're in the Redwood. And of course, we've got all our friends joining us. So we're going to go over to them now, and the lovely Nadia's going to take a few questions from the audience.
Paul, you know me a long time, fanatical Crystal Palace fan. First part of the question, where will Crystal Palace finish this season? And part two, Patrick Vieira, will he be the next Arsenal manager? And is Arteta going anytime soon?
Wow.
So there's 3 questions here, yeah?
I never could count.
Crystal Palace will do what they always do. They'll stay up, and they'll be delighted to do that because of the next year's revenue. Patrick Vieira will not be Arsenal's next manager, and I think Arteta may last the season, may not. But I don't think he'll go beyond the end of the season.
Are you speaking as a Spurs fan, by the way, hoping Arteta stays?
I hope Arteta stays. I'm not sure. What I find amazing in Arteta, he's been a coach at Man City, in all due respect. A lot of you could be a coach at Man City under Pep Guardiola and the money that Man City have got, richest club in the world. So it's not a difficult one. And he gets pointed, arguably one of the top 10 clubs in the world. He gets the manager's job. It's quite unbelievable, really, how you can do that. But he is what it is. They've spent a few quid. They play our team on Sunday. They play Spurs on Sunday. It's a difficult game whenever. Eh?
What's your prediction?
I think it'll be a draw. It could go either way. You never know. Both teams are up and down like yo-yos at the moment, but I think it'll be a draw. But Patrick's no chance of getting the Arsenal job. I think he'll do well to stay at Palace for the year, to be honest. And I like Patrick, by the way. Obviously one of the all-time great players.
I think we have another question here. What's your question?
Hi, Paul. Any thoughts of you going into football management ever? Did you ever consider it?
Yeah, at the end of my career, I had 2 offers from Steve Perriman, who was at Watford, and Harry Redknapp, who was at Bournemouth, both great friends of mine, to become their assistants. But it was 7 days a week, 24/7, up and down motorway, scouting and whatever, and the money wasn't great. So I wanted a City career. I thought I had a bit more in me, something a little bit different in me. So I didn't do it because I took my coaching badges early on in my life. I was 19, I think, took coaching badges. So I didn't do it, and I've had no regrets. I've still been very close to a lot of them, and know how it works and whatever. But no regrets on that. I've got no regrets in my life, actually, none at all.
See, that question there is asked to a lot of us in the game, and there is a big downside if you go into football with a bad proposition. That not getting paid well, really long hours, the security of the job, which isn't great for most ex-footballers. You don't last. Is that a fair point, John?
Yeah, and one of the biggest points, right, you never know where the job's going to be, so you might have to move away from your family. It's not always going to be, local and somewhere that's convenient. You've either got to uproot your whole family, which is never easy if the kids are at school or, people don't want to go. So often going into management isn't that straightforward.
No, and you could have a manager at the club that gets sacked and someone else come in and says, I'm going to change my backroom staff. So you found yourself doing a really hard job and putting a lot into it, and they're saying, well, some of the stuff we're changing. And that's one of the issues that a lot of ex-players face. I got offered a proposition a number of years ago to go to a former club I played for, Millwall, and it wasn't a good option for me. I'd looked at it and thought, how on earth would I succeed if I got this job? And I came to the conclusion it would have been a bad idea to do it. So like Paul thinks it's not the right track for him or the right path, John's experienced it, and I did the same thing as Paul and said, no, I think I'm better off staying out of. If you get something put in front of you, think excited, and it's a proposition you really believe you can achieve something, that's different.
But the weirdest thing is, Ron, is that, and that's why it's a great question, is sometimes as a player, and you're a legend at clubs, and you go into management, it becomes something different, and it changes the whole thinking and the ethos and how you're remembered at the club. Because if you go in and it doesn't work out, they'll just, seize you, and it puts a taint on it, and it puts a taste in your mouth that spoils something that was really special,
And actually, Tottenham have had that situation where two of our greatest players, Ardiles and Hoddle, both managed the club, but with no money, and with chairmen who didn't want to back them, didn't have the money behind them maybe. So then they had no chance. But luckily, they haven't been tainted because they were so good, and I think fans understand that they weren't given a real chance. They've got away with it, and they're still as loved and idolised as they were previously.
I have a question just on that. What advice do you have for Spurs going forward?
If you could talk to Nuno.
I think we've got to get our tactics and selection right. But I think the problem is that we need to buy some players in January. We need more players.
You think more in creative midfielder?
Creative midfielder and maybe another defender. I mean, I'm just saying is that we're short at the moment. We are short, and just hopefully the best advice I got, hopefully, is that we will keep fit. All our players stay fit, because if we have a few injuries, we've got no chance.
Next question, please.
So, getting away from current affairs, going back a bit, Paul's question for you, but I guess, you're multi-generational as players. So, what one thing would you bring back from your heydays into the game now? What do you think the game is missing that you had back in the day, be it the 60s, 70s, 80s or 90s?
I'd like to see tackling come back. Really, I think they're trying to make football a non-physical game. And I've got to be honest, all these 20, 30 passes, it bores me to death. That you see a lot of the clubs play now. And I'd like to see more physical contact, because football is a physical contact game. And I think UEFA, FIFA have tried to take it away. Our referees have just followed suit and become completely not so much this year, but last year, totally reliant on that VAR thing, where your elbow could be offside. So I'd like to see a little bit more physicality come back in. I'm not talking about smashing people. I'm talking about just some genuine challenges, and maybe an understanding of referees that you can win the ball in a tackle without it being a foul.
See, I would go two up front. I'm saying, if you ask Paul, would you like to play against one or two? Pretty obvious answer.
Easy one, yeah.
One's a hard job to do. In the modern game, so many strikers are isolated. I want to see teams play with two up front. Now, there are the odd occasion you get that type of style, but I was in it from an era where you had partnerships, right and right. You had Archibald and Crooks. Me and Teddy at Millwall, and I just always think I'd love teams to have different tests, because what we don't want is a game, and it's happened all in the younger levels, is it's all about goalkeeper gets the ball out to the fullback, passes it, and like Paul said, overplay in some degree. I want to see some teams that go, do you know what, we're going to offer you a different problem. See how you handle that.
It's about time they bring back little and large up front, isn't it? Yeah.
The big man and the little man, that was the days when football was great. I absolutely loved that. And I was going to, actually, that's part of what I was going to say, was a partnership up front. It doesn't have to be a big man and a little man, but it wasn't it? It was the guy that won the headers. This fast guy went and got onto it, like a Dean Saunders or a David Speedy. But for me, what happens, I was a striker when I was young. Stevie Coppell turned me into a wide player, and I embraced that. And I want to see why. I want to see Ginola running down the ring. I want to see Kanchelskis over Mars. I want to see Tony Galvin. I want to see what Demar Gray's doing and Townsend, and getting the ball wide, beating players, crossing it, and Cascarino coming at a far post and banging it in. And I want to see that. I want to see teams playing in the opposition's half and getting up quicker. You know, all this playing out the back invites too many goals now scored from winning the ball back in that defensive third, trying to overplay, give it away, and there's a goal. That's not exciting. We want to see people beat something, you know, the early Ronaldo, you know, tricks and Ryan Giggs running down the wing and crossing it. I'd bring back wing play.
It was great in the past, wasn't it? We'll get a bit too nostalgic.
It was so much better then.
It's a question for the two experts and John Salako. Do you think Levy has made a mistake holding on to Harry Kane against his wishes, bearing in mind his heart's not in it?
Good.
Paul, yeah.
So that was. Have we made a mistake keeping hold of him?
Yeah.
Well, you could never make a mistake keeping hold of your best player. What we always needed to do was add to Harry Kane, and we still do. I was quite loud verbally in the summer saying he wasn't going anywhere. I know he wanted to go, but he only wanted to go if we weren't going to do, sign the right people and strengthen the squad, which we've hardly done really. And also, if we got 150 million for him, would it have made any difference? Would he have spent more? I don't think so, because then other clubs know you've got more money and our silly money. So I just think that we keep Harry Kane, we keep everybody we can, but we've got to add to it. And until we add to it, it won't help Spurs. Harry does want to win things. It's nothing to do with money, by the way. We've got someone who earns...
Is it not? I was going to say, you asked about Levy. Levy's delivered the best stadium in the world. Yep. That's got to be... I mean, Arsenal, when Arsenal built their stadium, which was the best at the time, it was all about the money. So is that why there isn't any money, or do you think there should be more money to complement that stadium?
I think, well, if you look at the last, the lockdown, we lost over £300 million in income, in revenue, and that's made a hell of a difference. So all of the clubs, and that makes a difference. Maybe paying Harry a little bit more. The wages make no difference to Harry. Harry's England captain. He probably earns 10 million off the field, 15 million at Spurs. He's on 25. He's got more than enough. He has loads of property. Harry's a sensible boy. He never goes out. Yeah, there's a good family behind him who look after his interest. So it's never been about money. He wants to win things, and ideally he'd want to win it at Spurs, because the whole family, from grandparents down, support Tottenham. They have a Tottenham family, and he's been there since he's 10 years old.
That's not really going to happen, is it?
Well, and until we go and buy 4 or 5 players, we're not going to win anything. No.
Everyone would love to see. I'd love to see winning football and trophies come to that stadium, because it's outrageously good. I know the Emirates was good, but the Spurs stadium is now.
We've got to make do with NFL. Boxing and pop concerts.
Joshua coming up.
Yeah.
You've got the NFL
I'll
coming
be there
up.
Saturday. Yeah. So
who do you think's going to win that? Usyk and
well,
Joshua?
I follow boxing a bit, but I mean, a lot of my friends who follow it a lot more are saying this fella ain't bad at Joshua's fighting Saturday.
Yeah, he's decent. I like
He's
him.
decent. He's got a
Yeah.
real chance, by the way. So I know Joshua's going to be the red hot favourite for obvious reasons, but I'm not sure. I mean, and also at heavyweight, it's one punch. It's one punch. We can land a lucky one, and the other fella's out. Yeah. So it'll be exciting. It'll be 68,000. I was with Eddie Earn on Sunday. He's excited with it. Joshua wanted to fight at Tottenham, not at Wembley.
That's his last fight with Anthony Joshua with Eddie Earn, isn't it? I think it's his last fight in their contract.
Allegedly,
Yeah, well, unless they renegotiate.
It's boxing, so anything happens, doesn't it? Yeah. That's another. Then we've got controversial. We talk about boxing. That's another world.
Yeah, we could absolutely be here
You get it
for
all on this
hours.
show.
I've been John Salako. Tony Cascarino is a legend. The fans and our friends in the audience have been sensational. But seriously, what a special treat. What an insight. Absolute legend. I can't say a big enough thank you to Paul Miller for joining us here on Pubcast. Paul Miller, everyone. Spurs legend. Join us again. We'll have more special guests for you. Welcome back onto Pubcast. We're here with all our friends in the Redwood, and we've got another special treat for you. We've got presenting royalty. Richard Keys and Andy Gray started Premier League football. They're in my heart. I was working with them at Sky Sports. He's very kindly joined us again. Richard, how are you doing?
I'm very well, John. Thank you.
Richard, I wanted to ask you, because obviously the big result of the weekend was Chelsea winning 3-0 against Tottenham. It was a difficult start for them, but they managed the game brilliantly and then ended up winning 3-0 and very comfortable.
I said at the start of the season, Cass, they for me are the team that should win it. But I think that Manchester United very, very, not easily, probably could win it. And that was pre-Ronaldo. I just thought that they'd done, the signings to that point that they'd made them contenders. But I have to say, I mean, there's many words I was looking for at the weekend when watching Chelsea, and the only one, Cass, for me to use was powerful. Everything they do looks so powerful from back to front, and Tuchel is. I honestly, I love him. I just think he's been positive. He's got so much time for people. It doesn't matter how many world broadcasters there are waiting to talk to him. He's courteous for all of them. He will go through the same questions and the same answers time and again. I just love everything he's done at the club, and for me, they're the one. The thing that would bother me most, Cass, and I don't know whether you concur or not. I don't know where Harry Kane goes from this point. I mean, his head is full of mints. I don't blame him. I blame City, because I really don't think Harry would have come out at the start of the summer and said, I want to leave, if he hadn't got a guarantee at that point from City that they would do a deal. Well, they didn't. They let him down. They hung him out to dry. And I still can't get my head around that they go and spend 100 million on a player that, for me, doesn't improve them, and yet they couldn't find 150 for one who would have been the one that they need and desperately need, a centre forward. And I as I say, I don't blame him. But he's way off, and he owes Tottenham fans. And at the minute, there's no sign of it. And we shouldn't kid ourselves that it is something that's just happened. If you remember, after 3 games of the Euros, there were people saying he shouldn't be playing at England level, and then got 2, of course, in the next game, which is always going to happen, isn't it? When those questions are asked. But I worry's the wrong word, but I have to say I'm looking at Harry Kane. He's a shadow of what he should be.
I'd add to that, Richard, that they played 7 games this season, 1 in the Community Shield, which they lost to Leicester. But 3 of them 7 games, they haven't scored. Yes, they beat Arsenal by 5. They beat Norwich in a similar way, beat Leipzig 6-3. But 3 out of the 7 games, City haven't scored. And that's where you see Harry Kane.
Oh, absolutely. And I honestly, Cass, I don't get it. I mean, it happened. I know it happened with Van Persie, because Platty was at City at the time, and they'd met, Platty and City representatives, and they met with Van Persie. They knew what he wanted. That day, Platty said, I've never left the meeting with a player more convinced that he was going to sign for us. And yet he ended up at Manchester United because City messed about with what it was that Van Persie was, or the terms on which they were going to sign him. Van Persie's, let's just say for argument's sake, it was 10 mil a season he wanted. City offer 5, and then they offer 6, and then they offer 8. Just do the deal. Fergie called and said, what do you want? Done. Why are Manchester City not getting the deal done? What to them? What is the difference between 120, 150? Just go and do it.
It's incredible. But Richard, this week we had the very sad news that one of our all-time greats, legend striker Jimmy Greaves, passed away at 81. What are your recollections of Jimmy?
He was so funny, John. He was so funny. I didn't ever really meet Jim when I was working in sport. I met him when I was at Breakfast TV. He was our TV reviewer, and he would come in on a Friday to preview programs for the weekend, come in on a Monday to look back on what had happened at the weekend, and then further forward into the week. And he was just so funny and just lovely to be around. And I spent hours and hours and hours with him in what we call the green room, the hospitality suite. And I went through all of those things with him. World Cup, he said to me on one occasion, he said, because we were talking about his alcoholism, and he said, I'm going to have a drink on my 50th birthday or the year 2000, whichever comes first. I've never worked out which it was that was going to, but he didn't, and I'm glad he didn't. But every day for him was a battle. And he was the one that, go back 30 years to an era when breakfast television, and we're all tiptoeing around each other. Boat race, morning after the boat race. And one or the other of the crews had thrown their cocks into the water. And Greavesy explained to Anne that it was boat race tradition that the winning team always dipped their cocks in the water.
Richard, I met I also met Jimmy once because he was an ex-Chelsea player. He was at Stamford Bridge, and I've used this line a few times, and you might have even heard it. But he said he bumped into me, and I wasn't having a good time at Chelsea, and he said, "I thought you was outstanding today, Cass." And I go, not really, thinking, no, I didn't really play well. Went. The problem is everyone else was out running. And he always used that line to me, you know. It's brilliant.
It was a one-off cast. And the sad thing for me is that the last 48 hours we've been telling stories about Jim. The people that didn't understand or perhaps didn't see, and I was on the back end of his career really as a young lad, but you know, I just wish he'd been able to feel the warmth whilst he was with us that has been poured or been pouring from people since as Jeff Powell said in a beautiful tribute in the Mail, since Jim slipped away one last time. That was Jim. That's what he did in order to make life easier when he was out and about, slip away before the end of the night and before people started getting tanked on alcohol. It was you know, it was hard for him, but you know, I mean, lovely man, and should have been knighted. You know, they all should have been knighted. But we missed a trick, and he's a loss. He was a one-off, and what a footballer.
He was an absolutely incredible. Just quickly, one last question before we leave you, Richard. Just the London derby, the North London derby, I should say. Arsenal, Spurs. How do you see that going?
Who cares?
Well, there we go. Richard, we can't thank you enough. You're an absolute legend, an absolute star. So I love to end the day, but thanks for joining us again. And
see
you again. Enjoy the sun, enjoy Qatar. You're an absolute star. Everyone, round of applause, Richard Keys. What an absolute legend, Richard Keys, talking everything football, and he'll be joining us again. But thank you for joining us. I want to thank our guests for joining us and our friends. A massive thank you to Tony Cascarino again. Just brilliant. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you again soon.